Welcome back to the Cottage Tactico on YouTube, and I'm really glad to introduce a new format for some shorter videos, the Tactico Take, more like 10 minutes rather than my big match breakdowns recently. So I'll aim to give you an opinion on a tactical topic of relevance to Fulham on a given week. And this week, well, it just had to be Sess. It's been a slow burn, but Ryan Sessegnon's cameos in recent weeks have been a high point. And we were reminded of that again with his assists against Arsenal and his arrival off the bench and a change of formation, more on that later, coincided with Fulham really coming back to life on the ball in that fixture. And before that Arsenal game, we obviously had that late goal off the left against Spurs. Celebration in the picture, right in front of me in H5. Enjoyed that one. And we also saw a strong cameo with some direct running and a real intent to try and make something happen away at United in the Cup. And he was off the right there, like against Arsenal. The only recent game he started brought another goal, this time early away at Wolves. In that instance, he was a left wing back. So, look, given the impact Sessegnon's been having and that flexibility, a lot of us feel like it's time to give Sess a start. The more interesting question, in many ways, is where and what that means for Fulham's system. And that's where I, of course, have a little tactical tweak I'd like to pitch to all of you guys. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. Is it time to unleash Sess? Now, other than playing in different positions and making some impact, the other common thread from Sess's appearances lately is limited minutes. Now, there's some anomalies in how this is captured with stoppage time, but basically he's listed as having had 13 minutes against Arsenal, 3 versus Spurs, 13 against United in the Cup, and then in that rare start against Wolves, admittedly 72 minutes. But we are seeing impact from Sessegnon in that limited time. And what stands out particularly, and this is not news to Fulham fans who knew him as a young player, what is really his superpower is good decision making and composure in the final third, whether that's engineering shots for himself or others. And you can see this in the data. So, what we've got here is the table of goals and assists per 90 in the Premier League for Fulham this year. And Sessegnon, 2 goals, 1 assist in just 110 minutes is sort of head and shoulders above everybody else. Now, obviously, this sort of metric tends to highlight players doing things off the bench, right? But what it shows undeniably is that the impact he's having is real. And there's a chance that we could see more from him if he had a bit longer. And given, like we said, that composure and decision making is what he does best, we probably want to see more from him in those positions higher up the pitch. So, how do we best do that, and what does it mean for the team more generally? Let's go to the board and get into the tactics. So, here are our two most recent starting 11s. First on the left, Palace at home in the Cup. Let's not speak more of that game, but what you can see is what you'd expect from Fulham, which is their 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 kind of hybrid, plan A for Marco Silva. And then on the right in purple, Arsenal away, where Marco rotated, but also began in that sort of 3-4-2-1 or 5 at the back shape that in many cases has been our plan B this season. And there's no doubt that Marco brought Sess in thinking he would basically be Anthony Robinson in either of these systems. So that could be, for example, we could have Ryan coming in at left back in the 4 at the back setup, or alternatively, we could have him coming in here at left wing back in the 5 at the back setup. Now, he's probably more suited to the wing back role that you see on the right. I don't think he's necessarily a brilliant sort of defender in a conventional 4 at the back system. And I do actually prefer that 4 at the back system for this Fulham side, which I've spoken about in various locations. I can do that again at some point. But I think importantly, more importantly, really, unless he's much more injured than we think, the problem we've got for getting Sess into the team this way is that Jedi tends to play. So we're going to have to be looking for somewhere else for Ryan Sessegnon to come into this side, I think, realistically. Um, and if I'm honest, I think if we're going to be doing that, where we should be looking is actually down our right hand side. So we've lacked options here in numerous ways. So often we've had Adama Traore out on the right wing, offering an isolation threat, and sort of that's worked at times, but it's not always worked. We saw Alex Iwobi there against Crystal Palace. I don't think that's the best place for Iwobi, and we'll come on to that later. So you could just have Ryan Sessegnon in as a conventional right winger, and I think he offers sort of a cut inside and shoot threat and enough smarts to be able to play and make some things happen as for assists as well. So we could just do that. I'm also quite intrigued by him in this right wing back role because what we see often, and perhaps less so in this game with Adama Traore ahead of them, is that Fulham have lacked a real outlet down the right hand side for much of the season when wingers have often drifted in, like Alex Iwobi would have done over in this position here. But I think this is even more exaggerated when we play five at the back because basically Timothy Castagna, who is a conventional fullback, is being asked to be our main right hand side wide attacking option. And I just don't think he has the attacking firepower to really hold down a flank as he's often asked to. So I quite like the idea of Sess in that role. It sort of doesn't matter for me if he comes in as a right wing back cutting in on his left foot. That's something that's happening more and more often in modern football. If you want to go back and watch some of Ruben Amorim Sporting, that was a big hallmark of what he did there. So whether it's as a conventional right winger or as a right wing back, I feel like that is the best place for Sess. And actually, when I introduced my tactical tweak, which is not so much of a tweak as a return to something we used to do back in the day, you'll see that it doesn't really matter for me which of these roles he plays because he's basically going to end up doing the same thing. So let's get into that. We've hopped in the time machine and we've landed in 2023-24. And look, I much prefer this home kit to the one we've got at the moment, to be honest. So that's nice. But it also reminds us of this. Remember this? The Bobby Reid role, a right winger who dropped back into a five out of possession. Now, similarly, it's a role that Alex Iwobi has played for us earlier this season. Again, against Manchester City, you can see Iwobi there dropping back into a five at the back. And he did that really well. But I want to go back to Bobby because I think Sess is perfect to do this in the Bobby Deckled over Reid kind of way. He offers the best of both worlds, a bit like Bobby did, because he's a real goal threat going forward, and I think we lack that sometimes. We have a lot of players who like to get on the ball, but we sometimes lack players who just like popping up and getting shots on goal and getting in the right position and making the right decisions in the box. So he's a goal threat going forward. I think he's more explosive than Timothy Castagna in terms of holding down a flank. But he has genuine intent to get back, and he could give us this back five base that we could jump out of when teams have five on our back line. And beyond our desire as fans just to get Cess into the team, I think this from a tactical standpoint feels like a no-brainer to me because it bridges Marco's two systems nicely. It gives him the flexibility of a back five when needed without compromising our right hand side. And I think that is what we've really lost when we've played five at the back. We've had no real outlet down the right. And I think Cess can do that. So let's just have a little look how this might work. Say if we were to use it against Liverpool, who we play this weekend at time of recording. So now back on the board, you can see Fulham's on-ball shape, and I've popped Liverpool in their out of possession shape, which is basically a 4-2-4 when they press, and then a 4-4-2 when they drop off against settled possession. And I think the key for Liverpool's out of possession shape and understanding it is that a lot of what they want to do is they want to basically allow Mo Salah to stay nice and high. So like you often see when they're pressing, Szoboszlai will come in here with Jota, and you'll keep Salah out on the right wing. But then when they drop back, Szoboszlai sometimes comes out onto the right hand side to allow Salah that freedom, and that's key to how they set up. But otherwise, it's just a 4-4-2 off the ball, and lots of teams do this. So this analysis kind of works for whoever we're playing. So let's look at how Fulham play. So obviously, a lot of the time we have the ball overloaded down on our left, and we overload down that side. So you get your sort of your wide triangle here. I've got Alex Iwobi in at the 10. I'll come on to that in a minute. But you've got your wide triangle here with Willian Iwobi and Robinson. Bassi and Berger come across to support the play. Lukic is kind of sort of drifting a little bit as well. And then in that case, you have, with Castagna sitting a little bit deeper to sort of make a back three, you have Sessegnon now here as an isolated threat on the right hand side. And I think he is capable of being that isolated threat, right? He might not be a Adama Traore one on one, but Sess is very capable of cutting inside and getting a shot off. He's got enough about him physically to try and get to the byline. Like, I don't think it's a waste of Sess to keep him isolated here because he is a one on one threat and he can pop up with goals if the ball comes back across. So when we play our normal way, this is possible. And I think he could be a more consistent option than Adama. And I think the key to bringing him in on that right hand side is that it allows you to get Willian into the team on the left, and then I think what's really important here is that it gets Iwobi into the 10. And Alex Iwobi's been a bit out of form recently. I think he's been playing too much. But I like the idea of him having the freedom to basically drift from side to side. A lot of the time, Marco, when he plays his sort of 4-3-3, that 10 has to stay on the left hand side and he wants Lukic to bomb up and down here. And I think that makes us a little bit predictable because we have a side that we play down more often than not. Um, I think that what you could do is by bringing Alex Iwobi back in, you could sort of play him as a more central number 10 and he would have license to roam to either side. And I think that's really important because then Fulham are able to be a bit more of a balanced threat down both flanks. We don't signal that we're going left all the time. And yes, Sess can be isolated, like we just showed when we have the ball on the left, but we're also able to do something slightly different, which is we can bring the ball down the right hand side. And when we do bring the ball down that right hand side, you can have Alex Iwobi coming out here. Maybe Sasa Lukic jumps in here, and you have another triangle there. And in doing so, you then start to isolate this other side, which I've talked about plenty, and getting Jedi some more space. And I think the thing about Sess is that he's comfortable enough in possession that he could play in this way as well, and he could try and feed in someone like Alex Iwobi on the underlap, or if he cuts inside himself, you could maybe get Timothy Castagne going on the overlap. Like I think you have enough options that you'd have a more balanced attack with someone like Sess there. So I think in possession, this makes a lot of sense. It gives us balance and it showcases what Ryan Sessegnon can do without necessarily impinging on what all of our other players like to do. Obviously, I just mentioned that he can drop in as five at the back. So a big part of this switch would be out of possession. So let's look at that next. So here you can see Liverpool in their sort of attacking shape. It's like a 4-2-4, I'd say. But these fullbacks will take it in turns to join in as well, and it's quite fluid. But I think what's really distinct about the way Liverpool attack is that often their wide players, so Diaz and Salah in this case, are the highest players forward. So they try and pin back fullbacks, and that sort of has a number of effects because someone like Jota and Szoboszlai, or sometimes Curtis Jones plays in these positions as well. They're trying to sort of drag out the centre halves because in doing so they create these big channels for someone like Salah to nip in here 1v1, or for them to overload. So if they get a fifth person into the line, so someone like Curtis Jones, who played it right back the other day, but Connor Bradley or Trent more normally can come and join this line. They start to create issues so that they get their wide players to have access into the box. And a lot of their game is about trying to sort of pull out those centre halves so that they create that space. And that's a bigger problem if you're playing four at the back, right? Because you're covering more space and there's no one really spare to cover you. Because, like we said initially, it's basically 4 versus 4 in this final line. So, being able to go to a five at the back is appealing. You can see why a lot of teams go for that. But the way that we do it is that maybe with someone like Sessegnon dropping in to a situational five at the back, you don't lose the attacking sort of nous going the other way because he can do that too. So Sess is willing worker, he gets back in there. And what does that allow? Well, it means that Bassi can go and follow Szoboszlai and these guys can shuffle across and they don't leave a massive gap for Salah in this channel, right? That's important. Similarly, if Salah gets the ball, you could maybe say to Calvin Bassi, go and join there because the right back will come forward then, so Willian will be occupied. By having that five at the back, you can say to Calvin Bassi, well, go on then, you get in there and help Anthony Robinson on Salah, and then Anderson can come across, Castagne can come across, and you've got Sessegnon out here being pinned by Diaz. It's not Timothy Castagne. So look, I'm not going to go deep into this game because it's not a tactical preview, but it just shows you a little bit of this is why Marco likes having five sometimes. And I get why he likes having five sometimes. It gives you options. But could Sess be an option to do that without completely undermining everything you're trying to do going the other way? And let's be honest, his final third output's been good enough for us to want to just see that anyway. So could this be a way forward? So there you have it. That's my pitch for assess, start, and crucially a way to bridge Marco's two systems whilst giving us a bit more balance. What do you reckon? Do you like this setup against the likes of Liverpool? Would you start Sess? Well, Marco. Let me know in the comments below and do drop a like and even a cheeky subscribe if you're enjoying Cottage Tactico content on YouTube. See you around and come on Fulham.